Hey everybody, this is Seth Haynes from Musician Guide to Hustling. I am here today re-recording something. We actually tried this a couple weeks ago and then I messed up the recording, so we're redoing it. Karen's a great sport. So I've got Karen Kubitis with us today. Karen runs an artist management company, and actually, you know what, Karen, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Hi, Seth. I'm so glad we're matching today, actually.
This was on
So my name
purpose.
is, yeah, it's prom here. So my name is Karen, and I'm actually a saxophonist. I'm Boston based, and my main thing was performing. And then, one day I just decided to start a management company. Obviously, it wasn't that quickly, but I had a lot of background in orchestral management, and I've always been passionate about orchestras. So that sort of a lot of events happened and sort of led me to starting a management company.
So, well, that was a very modest representation of what Karen does. So you said you had a lot of background in orchestral management. What is that? So for the folks that are watching that are either potentially music students or freelancers or whatever they are, they're performers. I mean, there are people from all kind of backgrounds that watch this stuff. So can you explain a little bit about what that means and kind of what the context is of that? Like, how did you in school get a lot of experience doing this stuff? Like, what did that look like?
Well, as a saxophonist, as you all know, unfortunately, we don't get much orchestral exposure. As much as we would love to play bolero and pictures at an exhibition, it's not likely to happen. So I decided to dabble into stage management and then sort of climb the orchestral corporate ladder. I did have an opportunity briefly to be an interim executive director for a small nonprofit in Boston called the Boston Classical Orchestra. And then at that point, in I guess the orchestral ladder, I was hiring all the high profile orchestral players to then solo with the orchestra. So that sort of got me a little extra exposure to what that meant and what sort of people got hired and that sort of thing. So that then helped me, with the help of one of my mentors, which I can talk about later, sort of transition into, oh, well, there's a niche that's sort of missing in the orchestral management world. And, why are these orchestral players not in management or not getting as much exposure? Why is their response time so delayed? And, blah, blah, blah. So I then decided to form a management company geared towards orchestral players and, musicians that wanted to take their careers to the next level and that were sort of open to that. So within the management, we sort of revamp everything. We do web design, social media management, photography, and sort of set up a package for each performer based on what they want to do. And then that's the sort of way to get engagements and whatnot.
Yeah. So just to dig in a little bit, what you just said. First off, there's a couple things. First off, how did you said, oh, I was the executive director of this organization. So you didn't just like randomly get picked out of like a class at Boston Conservatory. Um, so,
No.
so what did that look like? I mean, are you a freshman doing this? Or is it like senior year? Is it like, what is that like? How does that happen?
Okay. Well, definitely luck and just sort of being at the right place at the right time and being willing to go out there and get it for yourself. I mean, none of this was handed to me. I had to go out and
Right.
talk to people and introduce myself and send emails and phone calls and sort of pay my dues. That's one thing that's really great about Boston, though, is there's lots of opportunities, and I was fortunate enough to have the sort of exposure as a freshman in college. So I first started as a stage manager, and then sophomore, junior year, I transitioned into marketing and more development side, and then our executive director quit, and I was the
So you
one of
were
the few
working
people.
there
Yeah,
during
I was working
school. Oh,
for
gee.
a while,
Excuse the
and then
text messages here.
it sort
Oops.
of happened.
Sorry, keep going. Keep going.
So famous. Everyone wants to talk to you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then our executive director quit, I guess, my senior year, and I was there in the interim while we found someone else. But I definitely had the experience to do it. I knew the ins and outs of the orchestra. What I found actually most important from that experience was I knew the orchestra because I had been the stage manager and I had
Right.
been that person there with the musicians. So the admin stuff, yeah, takes skill and experience, but the most important part is the orchestra. So that actually gave me an interesting perspective to help take the group to the next level.
Right. And so that was while you were in school that you were started working there, and then your first role there was what, stage manager? Is that right?
Yeah,
Cool.
stage manager.
Right. So I think it's always really interesting, like kind of the process behind, like, you see people soloing in an orchestra. It's like, wow, they are so lucky that they get to do that, or people run these organizations or they have their own business or whatever it is. And
Right.
I think it's really easy for folks to, um, look at it and say, like, wow, like they're so different than me. Like I could never do that. And I think it's just a lack of kind of understanding of the process. So I'm like super interested in that. So I'll probably keep hounding you on, wow, what happened? How did you do that every time? Because I think that's like the really important thing that like school does not teach anybody, or
No.
is that, like people can have these great jobs and have these like killer experiences and everything. Um, but it's just a matter of understanding the process to get there, because like you said, it's like you don't just get plucked out of a class in Boston Conservatory and like thrown into a management role of somewhere. Like that doesn't happen. It's working up the ladder step by step, small things, and having an understanding of the business. So can you talk about CAM then a little bit? So when I say CAM, it's Cubitus. Did I say that right? Cubitus.
You did. Cubitus Artist Management.
I had to write it down on my notes so I would actually say it right. It looks like Cubitus. Cubitus Artist Management. So you say you did an artist management company. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, who is someone that you manage, and like why are they unique from other artist management companies?
Okay, so my company is a little bit different than most management because we actually focus on developing a relationship with the artists. When I first started, I'm a huge fan of Opus 3 and Parker Artists and all the big New York-based management companies that
Sure.
have the big people like Joshua Bell and Yo-Yo Ma and
Yeah.
but to me, those rosters are gigantic, and yes, ideally that would be a dream one day. But I really wanted to develop a company where I could develop a relationship with the artists and sort of get to know them as people and start whatever they wanted to do because I knew them. It wasn't just standard like, oh, I want to play as a soloist with this and this orchestra, or I want to do this and that. We, including myself, had a preconceived notion that orchestral players just wanted, and by orchestral players I mean people in the top 5 orchestras, or that's their full-time job, wanted to just be soloists with an orchestra, or just maybe college professors. But they really have a wide palette of things they actually want to do. Some of them want to be solely clinicians or recitalists, or things like that we don't necessarily assume right off the bat. So
Right.
I wanted to create a platform where I could work in a full circle with them and sort of get to know them, figure out what they wanted to do, and then us together as a team sort of figure out what that meant.
Right.
Some of the clients I work with are Toby Yoff, she's the principal trombonist of the Boston Symphony.
Right.
I work with Carol Yodge, she's the principal tuba of the Philadelphia Orchestra. Denise Tryon, fourth horn of Philadelphia. All of these people,
Are there any non-brass players?
No, they're not all brass players, but most of them are. And I love them. I've learned how to drink beer and scotch, and they're just a riot.
That's why Karen really does this.
Yes, it's for the scotch, everyone.
The booze. These guys have great booze. So let's talk a little bit then about like, you currently run this company now. But what was kind of the experience? Like, obviously you have some experience in like management of nonprofits and things, but like, so what was kind of the process of like getting this started? Like, what did that actually look like? I mean, was it just like like Toby Off doesn't just pick up his phone and like, again, call over to Boston Conservatory and grab a student and say, hey, can you manage all my stuff? No, like, there's a process and something there that like kind of like leads the way to these bigger and bigger opportunities. So can you talk a little bit about that, like where that actually came from? Like, what were the first things that happened and how did you leverage those into more opportunities? Because that's a lost art with a lot of people, I think, is taking what they have and then working with that and then expanding from there versus trying to imagine having things that are not within their reach and working with what they have. So if you talk a little bit about that kind of process.
Sure. Before I get into the process, definitely one thing that I look back and I'm actually thankful that I did was I'm a very resourceful person,
Right.
and a lot of the things in my management company I had no idea about, like web design or
Yeah.
social media
Yeah.
or even photography. I hate having my picture taken. So I sort of had to position myself in a place like, okay, so this is what I want to do. This is my vision. I don't know how to do it. Let me find the people that do. So it became this whole networking thing, and just contacting your friends of friends. In fact, one of my team members for Cam, one of my web developers, I've never met him in person. All we've done is over the phone and via
Right.
Skype, and I've been working with him for over a year now, and we have a great relationship. But it was that sort of thing where I had to step out of my comfort zone, accept the things I knew and I didn't know, and sort of find answers and get the ball rolling. But so Cam actually started about a year and a half ago officially. I met Toby Oft when I was working with the Boston Classical Orchestra. He came to be the soloist, and he actually played one of my favorite trombone pieces, the David, which I know everyone is like, ugh, play it all the time, but I love it, and I love how he played
I
it. It
love
was
brass
very
band. I don't even know
memorable.
what that is. Like.
So he was there and he was soloing, and I was just a total fangirl, and like
Right.
I've always followed his career, and he's fantastic, and he won a top 5 orchestra job against all odds, and he's just a wonderful human and a gentleman and an excellent pedagogue. So I was, of course, fangirling in this concert and sort of met him after, and kind of wanted to pick his brain because at that time I was transitioning to starting to work for the Boston Symphony, and my dream job at that point was to be the stage manager for the Boston Symphony. And he was sort of like listening to me and humoring me and talking to me through the process of what that would look like and whatnot. And then we I ended up he ended up telling me that he went to the BSO Asia tour, and he was wondering like why his website and his social media hadn't gotten as much traction as he expected, after this big tour. And so that sort of got me thinking, and I was sort of looking at like, okay, well, how often are you posting? And let me take a look at your website, and let's sort of see the things that you're doing as well as everyone, other orchestral players that have this sort of exposure.
Sure.
And then started researching other high profile people like Larry Hahn and Joshua Bell and blah, blah, blah. And there was a huge discrepancy and difference between what they were doing and what him, along with his colleagues, were doing.
Right.
So at that time as well, I was looking into getting into stage managing. So David Krause, the principal trumpet of the Met, started his first summer brass festival in the Berkshires.
Okay.
And Toby was going to be one of the musicians among other people from the Met. And I sort of called David Krause and I was like, hey, David, so you don't know me, and I'm just really looking to get some exposure in stage managing. I know you started this, summer thing, and I'm happy to come and work for free and just set up your chairs and stands and logistics and anything you need me to do. And it was also, I'm a huge fan of David Krause.
Right.
So he, of course, was like, okay, weirdo, but sure. Why don't you come on over?
Okay, great. Don't kill me my
right.
sleep.
He was very generous. And, I sort of went and was able to participate in this festival, which was fantastic. And when I got there, what ended up happening was half of Puerto Rico showed up, and I'm Colombian, so I speak Spanish. And a lot of these kids didn't have really solid English, so I ended up translating pretty much all the brass lessons throughout, especially the trombone.
Right.
So that was another thing where I was like, oh, well, I came here to stage manage, but now I'm translating, and this is great. I'm getting to meet and to get to know Toby more in depth as far as his teaching. I got to sit in some stuff with Carol Jansch and
Right.
Galindo, and it was just amazing. So
can we pause right here for a second?
Yeah.
So you said something really interesting that I think a lot of people will be like, and you said, can I go do this for free? I just want to get the experience. This is something that, I don't know what people have a really weird relationship, like psychologically, with the idea of doing free work. And I think something that a lot of, especially music students, really overlook is the value of doing that. Obviously doing it strategically in the right place. Like I'm not saying go show up and play like big weddings for free every weekend or something, and then pray to God you get a gig out of it. Like that's not what I'm talking about. But understanding that there's a strategic way to actually do free work. And again, we were kind of talking about we kind of talked a little bit about leveraging what you have into something a little bit more.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people have that, especially students, with a lot of things they have, and this is, feel free to jump on this at all, but is time. They have time, and that time, their time, can be extremely valuable to somebody that's super busy and needs like another hand on deck. Like these like summer festivals are a great example where it's like two or three people wanting running a summer festival kind of
Right.
thing, and like that means setting up chairs and stands. It means navigating people around. It, you know, there's someone has to schedule rooms and deal with the venue and all, and you know, are the lights going to be on in the hall when we get there? Like all this
Right.
kind of stuff, and just things like that. Even if you don't know those specific like maybe you don't know how to work like a lighting thing, whatever, that's fine. But there are ways to add value to people in really compelling ways without having a super specific skill set, especially when you're starting out. If you can find the right people to do free work for, which you did, and you were able to leverage that into like, and then it just so happened that you had a great skill set. You could communicate with everybody at the festival. And
Right.
like I think that's an important point that a lot of people miss. You know, like I've written about free work before, and it really like ruffled some feathers with some people. And it's like, I mean, I do free work all the time. I still do free work all the time. That's how I like started my business,
Yeah.
was doing that. And you know, a couple years later, I've got this great thing going on, and I still do free work all the time for the right people. And sorry, I just wanted to point that out to folks, and
Yeah, no,
before I
and
forgot.
another thing, like most of my, I mean, my real, I went to school for this is saxophone. I mean, that's like, I feel
Right.
like the one thing I can do well, but the rest of my skills have just been out in the field and,
Oh,
just
totally.
being with people at the right place, right time. And also just asking questions. Like, my first stage managing gig, I will always remember this. Boston Classical Orchestra, Steve Lipset, he wasn't sure, he's the conductor. Wonderful man, and to this day I adore him, and we work together. It's been like 7 years now. And just brilliant conductor, fantastic person. And I show up, and he still thought I was a master's student, or he wasn't aware that I was a freshman, even
Right.
a couple of years down the line, which was kind of funny. And then I walk in there, and he's like, "All right, can you spot this? Can you spot that?" I had no idea what that meant, and I'm sort of looking at him like, "Oh, don't fire me! Can you just tell me how to do this?" So he would grab the tape and be like, "This is what I mean," and "This is where the first violin sit," and we like to face each other, and that sort of thing.
Right.
So it was, sort of being willing to put myself out there and step out of my comfort zone and just accept that I didn't know what I was doing, but
Right.
that people were going to help me and that it was going to be okay. A lot of fear holds us back a lot, and I think it's silly.
Yeah, it is. It is silly. I mean, it's justified. I get it, but there's like, there's nothing wrong with not knowing how to do something and then figuring it out. Like, I mean,
Right.
I do that all the effing time. Like, even now in my own in my own business and life, like people ask me to do stuff, I just say yes. And if that means that I have to take a course online or hire someone to help me with it,
Right.
so be it.
Yeah.
So I just realized I was supposed to have a Skype call with somebody else. Oops, I'll call them later.
Oh.
I'll call them back. So anyway, you were saying though, before we jumped into the free work thing, you were talking about the festival and how after you were translating, then what happened like after. So you go to this festival, to jump back on the rails here. So you're at the festival and you were translating and everything. So what happens after this festival? Like, obviously you were a huge asset during this festival. Like, then what, how did that progress into another opportunity?
Yeah. So at this festival, I got to spend a lot of time with Toby and with Carol, and at that time we started working on Toby's website. So this festival was, I believe, a weekish. I finished his by then, and then Carol sort of, I started talking, and I quite frankly, I asked her. I said, Carol, huge fan, again, totally fangirling. We both went to Interlaken, and when
Right.
I was there, like she was, or she still is, the Interlaken princess, and we all look up to her, and oh my God, she got her job her senior year, and she's crazy, and we love her.
The Interlaken princess.
So of course I'm sitting there like, oh, Carol. So I was looking at your website too, and you're fantastic, and you're a great pedagogue, and you're an excellent player, and you're young, and you're beautiful, and I really think that the world doesn't get to see that, via your website, because I believe websites are, the business card to the world. Um, and I don't even know how the conversation sort of transitioned, but she was like, yeah, she kind of got the hint and was like, I would love to work on my website, and let's try it out. So then I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, I have another website person, and potentially from that we can sort of work together as far as management, and I love her, and I would love to find her work and that sort of thing. So then this festival ended, and I got back to Boston, and I was like, okay, so I have Toby, who is putting his faith and his career in my hands, and I have Carol, who wants me to do her website and potentially do a Latin American tour, because that's what we were all talking about. We discovered that these kids and their background, and how giving and how much they loved being there, and just it was such a beautiful experience that I decided, I really want to take these great high profile people on tour to Latin America. I mean, they don't get that much exposure, and I speak the language, so I'm happy to be the translator. And
right,
that sort of morphed into, okay, some tours for Toby, and then let's get some stuff for Carol. So then I decided, okay, well, I have these two people, I have to make it legitimate now. So I decided to form the management company. And, for the past 8 months, it's been morphing into different things. But at first, it was just, web design, social media, and booking stuff.
right.
And, now it's transitioned to consulting and other things. But that's pretty much how it started. Leap of faith, went to the bank, got a tax ID number, and
right.
I'm a company now.
Right. So, yeah, that's super interesting. So, how many folks do you work with now? Like, how many folks are on your roster?
I have about 12.
12. And so, where did all those people come from?
That's interesting. Word of mouth, actually. I really didn't have a website for my company for the first 7-8 months.
Right.
So it was all, their friends telling their friends what I was doing.
Right.
I never really market myself until fairly recently.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think because a lot of folks, and we just kind of going back on this little topic we were talking about a little bit earlier, is I think a lot of people tend to focus on what they don't have. So let's say I'm a music student, and the thing, and everybody wants to talk about how to market themselves, and everybody's like, I gotta market myself. I'm gonna post on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all this crap, and have a SoundCloud, and that's what's one way to do it. But the thing they don't have is what they're trying to work with is a platform. They don't have an audience listening to what they have to say yet.
Right.
And so, but a lot of people, but that's where a lot of people put all their eggs. All right, I'm going to get on social media and have a website. It's a website doesn't matter if nobody's looking for you yet.
Right.
If you don't have something that you are showing off, if you don't have a product to sell. But what's interesting is that what everyone does have is a network.
Yeah.
And so that's you just said yourself that that's how the business grew. It's there were the people I was working with, they have friends that have similar problems. People always tend to associate with people that have similar interests, similar things in their life. I mean, especially in the world of orchestral musicians, they sit next to 100 of them every day.
Right.
But that's something that I think a lot of for the folks listening and checking and listening, watching, to take away is that it's not, whenever you're getting started, it's with anything, whether it's freelancing or you want to start your own business or whatever it is, really double down on what you have access to. You don't need a website to start out. Karen didn't have one for months, and months and months. I mean, I was building websites for people for the last few years, and I didn't have a website for myself until 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
I built probably a couple dozen websites in the last 5 years, probably 3 to 4 years, and not 5, but 3 to 4 years, and I never had a website for myself. People were paying me to build them websites. I didn't even have one, and so I think that's a good takeaway for folks listening, is that work with what you have. Everybody has something they can work with. Everyone knows other people. start there. Like, you have teachers, you have connections that you can reach out to for help. Like, use that. So
Right.
I think that's a really valuable lesson of, from your own business, but also that other people can apply in their own lives. So
Yeah.
So you said that you do consulting stuff. So what are some of the I mean, I know what they are, but can you, and I know you've done a little bit of work with like students and younger musicians, and even just like, I mean, even other folks in various capacities at different levels in their careers. Can you talk a little bit about two things? A, what those services are, and B, what kind of things that these people that come to you, like, what are the simple fixes they have? Like, everybody's doing, anybody that's like trying to market themselves and things, without having like experience doing it. I mean, there's just always like simple things that can be fixed and adjusted that will get kind of the 80-20 rule, 80% of the outcome comes from 20% of the input kind of thing. So can you talk a little bit about what that consulting is, and what are some of the common things you see with folks you work with that are fairly simple to do, that are get the results that people are looking for?
Sure. So once I started the management, I was getting a lot of press kits and just inquiries about management. And a lot of the people that came to me really didn't need management, whether it was young professionals or students or professionals. It was more of
Right.
fixing one thing or sort of working on a skill set. So I decided to do similar things that I do for my management clients per project for consulting. So the services are social media management. So I sort of work with the person and figure out where they are in their career and how to be most effective. We don't all need to be on 10,000 platforms and, doing all this crazy stuff. It just depends where you are. You can use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, web design, and photography. I'm a huge stickler about perception and marketing. I really think that the way people perceive you and the way your package looks, like the product you're selling, which is yourself, has a huge influence on the level of work you get and the sort of opportunities that come your way. Again, like we said before, you don't need to have stellar photography and a crazy website and all this stuff before having it all together. But there's definitely room for growth in that department. And so I've been working with a lot of students, sort of taking appropriate pictures and
Right.
things like that.
Nothing like laying in a grass field with like their violin at their neck or
right, short dresses and high heels. None of that. Just keep it classy and organized, and that works for the person. A lot of people associate
not posing on the beach with your trombone.
A lot of people associate like high fashion with just ridiculousness, and it's not. It's just sit there with your instrument. But I like people to be able to see the person, and I think photography is such a great way to do that, where people lose their identity with their instruments and sort of end up doing the whole prom pose kind of thing. I think just your instruments, your accessory, just look nice, feel good, and just smile. It's really not a big deal. And one of the common mistakes that I see is lack of organization. I can't tell you the amount of people that I get inquiries about, and they're just all over the place.
Right.
And what boggles my mind, and by all over the place first, I mean, they'll send me a press kit with a link to an expired website,
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 emails with like their bio and a picture, and I forgot this. There's typos.
Right.
And it's very hard to take someone seriously that doesn't have it together, at least in an email. I mean, that's a terrible first impression.
Right.
And what
or
boggles
5
my
emails,
mind is,
like
as musicians, there's so much in our lives that is out of our control that I am, keen on focusing on the things that I can control,
Right.
and making sure that they are under control. So
Right.
even like press kits, when you have your long bio, your short bio, a picture, your CV, and a resume, you use this for auditions, you use this to apply for jobs. Like, this should be organized. It should be sitting on a folder in your computer, ready to go at any time. You
Right.
can't be updating your bio or your resume every time you're applying for something. That
Right.
makes no sense. Setting
and you're
yourself
wasting
up for failure.
time. That's stupid.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's one of the common things that I see. So I encourage people to get organized,
Right.
and proofread things. And first impressions are very important.
Right. So, it's funny. I was literally talking to somebody the other day, and they were they asked me to look at something, and they were like, "Can you just review this email that I sent someone?" Like, I'm trying to figure out why they didn't respond, and they sent me. So then I immediately look at my inbox, and they had forwarded me like 7 emails in a row. It's like, oh my god, what are you doing? You expect me to look at 7 emails? Are you crazy? So
Right.
but one of the things so the first thing that I was talking to this person about, they're actually not a musician. So it was, but one of the things that I think this is like a really interesting thing is like whenever anybody's pitching something, like if you are a student or a freelancer or a performer or an orchestral musician or whatever it is, and you need something from someone else, whether that's you want them to hire you, or like a gig or a teaching opportunity, or if you need a recommendation for something, whatever it is, always make it so easy for the other person to say yes.
Right.
Like, don't send them, like Karen said, multiple emails. And, oh, sorry, I forgot this. Oh, here's this. Like, separate files, like bad links and all this other shit. Like, excuse me, but just don't do, like, it drives me crazy when people do that. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you send someone an email that's like super long, it's like a block of text. It's like scary when they open it. They're not going to read it. They're going to delete it. They don't want to think about it. But if you go to them and say, with whatever, let's say you're applying for a solo competition or whatever it is, and make sure all your recordings, your bio, your pictures, your resume, it's in one zip folder that's like, here, see attached for boom, 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 boom. Please let me know if you need anything else. Thanks so much. I can't wait to hear from you. Send. Done.
Yep.
10 seconds. It should be so easy for them to look at it, know exactly what it is, and then say, okay, great.
Right.
Like, don't make them do any work ever.
No, I agree.
Over.
And the same thing goes, for sales. We're technically salesmen, and I found for my business as well, I was learning, and thankfully my artists are great, and their feedback is always very constructive. Sometimes when I was pitching my ideas or things,
right,
it was just too much. It was just information overload. Even when I was speaking to them, I was just like, okay, so we need pictures and a website and social media, and we need to do this right now, and it's so stressful, and not people's priorities. So you need to figure out a way to communicate where it's effective and concise. Concise is the best. And I now understand that, getting hundreds of emails on the daily, concise is always what I get to the quickest.
Right. If I can look at it and say, yes, no, tell me more, like, that's great.
Yeah.
If I have to think of, but that's like, if anybody, like, humans, it's just human nature that we're kind of lazy. Like, nobody wants to do more work than they have to. And you should never, like, nobody should, if you, like whether you're pitching somebody, it's like to be a client, or you're a musician that's trying to, get a lesson with somebody that's, like, stupidly busy. Like, just, like, tell them exactly what they need to know. And, again, just make it so easy for them to say yes. Don't make them do any work. Do everything for them before you email them. Like,
I agree.
Like, and just for like a concrete example, because people are probably thinking like, well, I don't know what that means. I get that it can be difficult to kind of understand it, but I'll give you an example of something I did recently where a friend of mine, he teaches at a school in New York, and he plays on a Broadway show. So he plays on Les Mis. So I wanted to meet up with him. He's a buddy of mine. His name's Eric. So I wanted to meet up with Eric, and like I know that he's super busy. So I actually, before I was going to be in New York, I was actually going to a concert of one of Karen's clients, and I knew that Eric played in Les Mis. So I went on, before I emailed him, before I did anything, I checked what the Les Mis schedule was for that day, if they had a show. If so, what time is it? Then you look at it and say, all right, I know this person is going to be in Midtown Manhattan at this time because they have a show that they're playing. So whenever I emailed him, I was like, hey man, I know that you're super busy. I'm actually going to be in town. I'm going to be right around Lincoln Center. And I think you've got a show that night. So if you're free, great. If not, I get it. But would you be available to get coffee at 1.5 hours before the show starts, whatever time it was? And it's like, And sure enough, he's a super busy dude, and it worked out. No problem. We met up, we hung out, and we got to catch up, we got to touch base and everything. We got to chat, and it was super easy for him because he was already going to be there. And it's like, okay, great. That made it so easy. Like, because I knew exactly what the problem was going to be for him before I reached out. And so that's like a concrete example for folks that are listening or watching, that they can take away, is like just one example of how to just make it so stupidly easy for someone to say yes, because we naturally don't want to do more work. So if you can take the burden off somebody else, you're gonna be way better shape. Okay, I said the rant was over, but now rant is over. It's officially over. So can we talk a little bit about common mistakes that you see from folks? Like you were talking, aside from like bad communication, like what are some things that, like, I know you get pitched by students and things once in a while. You want they want a manager so they can say they have a manager. Like, what are some of the, like, the big mistakes that people are making that they could fix themselves, that like you don't need to fix for them?
Oh man.
The eye roll.
Okay, well, for me, the biggest thing is attitude. I feel like young professionals aren't. I gotta think about my words. Could be kinder.
You can just lay it out there. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
people need to hear it.
Being exposed to these people with just brilliant, stellar careers, what I would consider the pinnacle of success, and then sort of I'm young, and my peers, we're still all conservatory aged people here.
Sure.
And sort of seeing how my peers interact and how they sort of just aren't really nice and aren't really aware of other people's feelings, and sort of like lack this self-awareness.
Yeah, it's empathy.
Yeah, it has me thinking, like,
or
you go to this big orchestral audition, what's the likelihood that anyone's going to win it, if that? The people there auditioning with you are your colleagues. They're your friends. They're the people that are going to hire you to go do clinics at their schools, that, to play in their groups and whatnot. Like, you can't just show up to an audition and be a jerk.
Right.
That's not going to get you anywhere. And, another reason why orchestras have tenure is because you got to get along with your section. So for me, it's more of, just be kind, be positive, have a nice attitude with people. And, you never know who is going to end up doing what.
Oh, like,
yeah. For me as a saxophonist, I'm managing people now. I'm getting some of my colleagues' resumes in my lap for these opportunities.
Right.
And, obviously I don't, decide anything based on malice or like preconceived notions, but it's definitely interesting for me to see, like, oh, well, this person wasn't really nice. Like, I hope they're nice now, or like
right.
maybe a good match for this because I know they tend to be this way and that way. So,
right.
It's just sort of like we're all in it together, and just be nice, be kind. Just how people perceive you is a huge thing, and it goes beyond your social media and your web design and your pictures and the sort of things you're doing. Like, nobody cares if you're a good player. If you're not nice and people can't stand you, you're not going to get hired.
Yeah, they're not going to call you.
Yeah,
there are plenty of people that I never call, because it's just the bottom line is like, I know they're not somebody that I want to be sitting in a section with or I want to hire, because
exactly.
If they're being jerk offs at a gig or something, and I'm the one that's like, what did the hiring, or if you were filling up, like, someone was looking for a specific person for a gig, like, and you send somebody and they don't, and they're kind of acting like a jerk off, pardon that word, jerk off, but that sounds so dirty.
Yeah.
But
no.
that reflects poorly on you or me or whoever it is, and like, they're not going to send you. They're not going to call you for something if you can't, like, behave yourself. It's right. Really what it is.
Yeah, no, and the same thing goes for burning bridges. I mean, we are in a very interesting industry. It's tough. You have to have thick skin and you have to be very resilient, but that by no means entitles you to be disrespectful or to, lose it. So, it's very, very important that you not burn bridges and that you have stellar communication, and, you're entitled to be upset and for things to be unfair. Life is unfair. Yeah. It sucks sometimes.
Tough cookies.
Yep. But you have to, just pick yourself back up and get it together and just do your best. But I see a lot of my colleagues and peers just burn bridges and just be rude and be disrespectful because they feel entitled. And in conservatory, you're in a practice room 8,000 hours a day, and you're in ensembles and you're in core classes, and you're just a hot mess. But that doesn't give you the right to be a jerk, and that doesn't mean that you're going to be. I mean, there's so many amazing musicians out there everywhere, all over the world. I mean, you can practice and be great and whatnot, but it's all going to come down to, do people like you? Are you a great colleague to work with?
Right.
Talent, I feel, only gets you so far. It's the way people
It's
perceive
true.
you and the way you interact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just the social aspect of like professional life is something that a lot of people miss. I think they misunderstand the weight it has. I mean,
Yeah.
because I can speak from like I do a little bit of contracting around Philly area, and there are plenty of people that I don't call and actually avoid calling just because it's I know that it's not a great fit socially in terms of like them showing up and getting along with everybody. Something as simple as that is
Right.
like super important. Like I would rather have somebody that's maybe not as not as stellar of a player, that's maybe a little bit has less like ability for certain things, but if they can get along with everybody and they're a great colleague in the section, they're hired, sold, done. Because I don't want to sit next to some like someone that's kind of being nasty or bitter or mean or just
Right.
kind of just being just kind of putting bad vibes. Like nobody wants to sit next to that or talk to that or deal with that. So like that's totally a huge part of it. Let's see. We've got a couple more minutes here. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of touch on at all from like your own experiences, or that you think, like let's say like students, younger freelancers, something from the other side of the table that that a lot of people only experience the artistic side of things and like showing up and playing and doing the concert. They don't experience the like administrative, like management, kind of the business side of things. Any thoughts on that you can leave some parting words of wisdom with folks on?
Well, I actually also did want to mention that it also is important to be very nice to the people that run the show. I mean, from a stage manager's perspective, we're prepared for divas and craziness, but it's nice to know that the musicians appreciate you. So
Totally.
Be kind to your stage managers, the stage hands. These people work really hard to make the concert work, and there's just so much craziness that takes place before the musicians get on stage and sit with the orchestra. Like the lighting and the booking of the hall and all of this stuff. I was going to say something. What was it? I like completely forgot.
Well,
lost my train of thought. I haven't had coffee.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will kind of say on that is that just jumping in, like I mean, I've been on both sides of the game. I've been on stage and I've been off stage. Trying to get people in the seats, selling tickets and things, and yeah, I mean it's something that a lot of people miss is just being flexible. Like if you're if you work in an orchestra and you have the opportunity to like, people don't have a lot of people don't understand like how much of an impact they can make on things like marketing and fundraising and things if they are just willing and flexible to chip in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, hey, maybe there's some donor dinner or reception that you can go to the development director or the the president or whatever and say like, hey, if there's anything that I can do to make your life easier, let me know. I'm happy to hop in. That stuff is huge because I mean, I can tell you from a marketing end, I mean, just because that's what I do, and I've done for orchestras, and now I do for a lot of people as a consultant. If people that are like willing to help and be flexible are, I mean, those are the people that get called for stuff and get a lot of the opportunities because you're building relationships beyond just like, because nobody owes you anything if you're sitting on stage. Like, don't care. There's a million other trumpet players that can play that part.
Agreed.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be again a jerk off, but like it's, I mean, if you can bring something else to the table and like just be like, like you're saying, be kind, be like, be considerate of other people, have some empathy
Yeah.
and like self-awareness, like that stuff goes a long way, and people remember that. There are
Yeah.
plenty of people that I call and don't call because they'll help me make my life. They'll help make my life easier whenever I've got
Right.
like a particularly stressful thing to deal with or a challenging thing. I mean, anytime that you can be of assistance to other folks, do it. You will never regret like, yeah, maybe there's some things like maybe you don't want to go to some like kind of stuffy donor dinner or something, or like go to the reception, but I mean, the better vibes you put out in the world, the better they come back to you. I mean, I'm a big believer in that personally, and I think that just being like courteous and giving is a really huge part of like, you know, aiding success. I think it's never gonna like blow back in your face by you giving your time or resources or something to help
Right.
someone else. Like that will never ever like come
Backfire.
back, yeah, and backfire. If you're like really genuinely trying to help someone and doing something good that makes their life easier, like people will not like that's never a bad thing.
Right. No, I completely agree. I was thinking back to our last conversation. What I wanted to say actually was you always ask people like what they would tell their younger self or like
Oh
right out
yeah.
of college to focus. I'm ahead of the game here.
Yeah,
Redeeming myself
you're
for
ahead of my
losing my
notebook
train of
again.
thought. No, well, actually, what got me thinking about that was recently I've been lecturing at colleges and conservatories
Yeah.
about branding and marketing, and to me, it was always a huge fear to speak in public. I hate that, and
Right.
now I'm sort of getting more comfortable and stepping outside of my comfort zone. And I've noticed that I've been growing, as a person and a professional in my company. And I was listening to all these questions and these eager young minds, even though we're all around the same age.
Right.
And everyone seems to be so scattered and just sort of like all over the place with everything. And of course, life after college is daunting. And as a musician, you're like, all right, well, if I want to be an orchestra player, I have to win a job, or like, am I going to have a day job and practice at night? Like, what is that going to look like? And
Right.
um, for me personally, I've found that the way I was able to transition from a student to a professional was to focus on one thing and do it well. And that took me a good year and a half after college in order to understand what that meant. I had to be in a position where I was without my 9 to 5 job,
Right.
and I didn't have any other specific playing opportunities at the moment, like a tour or something like that. And I just sat there and I was like, all right, well, I have this company. It's either going to be an expensive hobby or I'm going to have to find a way to have an income. And we all forget that businesses need a profit, and as a salesperson, you need to find your income. And when I made the decision to just focus solely on cam or solely on one thing in the company to make it grow, that's when I saw success. And what I told the students was just whatever you want to do, give yourself a cutoff date. And the person that most brilliantly said this was Toby. He said if I didn't win the job that I wanted by a certain age, by 30 I think was his cutoff date, I'm going to quit and I'm going to do something else. And what that gave him was the sort of motivation every day to practice, to work really hard to win a job.
Right.
And also the peace of mind to know that he gave it his all and there was no regrets. So this is sort of a way to never half-ass anything, I guess. You're
Right.
just like, all right, if by this point in time I can't do it, I'm just going to do something else. But
Yeah.
give it your all, not half-ass everything and then wonder why you didn't
Yeah.
make it.
Oh, why didn't that work out?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reframe that and reword it for like from my own perspective, and I think about this all the time. And like, I recently, left my full time gig, and the thing, and it was kind of a similar situation for me. I was like, all right, I got this thing I've been doing. It's I'm gonna go all in on it and make it happen, but it's so easy to kind of like spread yourself thin and worry about like the concern for everybody is money. Like everybody worries
Right.
about like paying the bills, and there are ways to do that. There absolutely are. That's a whole other conversation, but there totally are, and it's not as hard as people make it. But
Right.
it's just accountability. Like if you want to do something and you want to do it really well, like you have to figure out a way to hold yourself accountable. whether that's taking auditions or teaching or starting your own business or getting a
Right.
job and like doing well in school and class, whatever it is. I mean, for a lot of people, like financial accountability is just naturally built into stuff like school. Like, all right, I spent this money. I'm not going to waste that loan that I took out. But
Right.
I mean, any way that you need to get accountability. I mean, that's why people make so much progress while they're in school, is because every week they go sit down with their teacher and for an hour and say, all right, why didn't you work on this? Like
Right.
you don't want to waste their time. They're holding you accountable for like what you're doing. And anytime you can incorporate that into your own life, your business, or whatever it is, I mean, the folks that succeed the most and the fastest and grow the most in like the shortest amount of time are the ones that are really held accountable, I think, and
Right.
create that accountability for themselves. So that's totally hits the nail on the head. I mean, that's a big thing in my life, and I wish more people would. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people miss that. Is that it's like, whenever you're holding yourself accountable, whether it's finances or other people's time or whatever it is. I mean,
Right.
that's why people get trainers at the gym. A lot of people, it's like you have someone there pushing you, holding you accountable for what you're doing, and
Right.
it's a magical thing. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
huge psychological shift.
No, and as conservatory students, we're sort of like we have that wiring of self discipline and just being organized in that capacity. And what bigger motivation than the rest of your life and your
Right.
career? Like you get to choose, like the oyster. What is that phrase or whatever? Like your life is like flashing before your eyes, and you need to sort of take it and decide what it is you want to do.
Right.
And you can do whatever you want. You just have to work hard and sort of get organized. And really, the sky is the limit. Had you told me 2 years ago that I was going to be doing this sort of thing, or Toby or Carol or Denise were going to be calling me and asking me things, it's just I seriously still get goosebumps. I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are
Right.
so cool, and
Yeah.
I get to work with them. I'm so lucky. But you sort of pave the way to do that, I
Yeah.
think.
Absolutely. Cool. I mean, I think that's a good spot to turn it off here. We'll wrap up on the other side, but Karen, thanks so much for taking the time today. You've been very generous with your time, and thanks so much. And we look forward to sharing this with everybody on the blog. Thanks, everybody.